Here to give us some valuable insight into some of the psychology at the play is Dr. Carole Lieberman, a psychiatric specialist and a forensic expert. So, doctor, when we look at what is happening right now, for example, in Portland, as we were just saying, 60 straight nights now of unrest in that city. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable number, especially when you see exactly what this unrest is. And I want to be clear, we're not just talking about protests or demonstrations. We're talking about some activists wanting to burn down this courthouse that's in the city of Portland. So what do you make of this situation? Is this just pent-up anger from the coronavirus lockdowns, or is there more to this?
Surely some of it can be explained by the pent-up anger of the lockdowns and of a fear of mortality, facing your own mortality and fear of death. But I call it Animal Farm. I think one of the biggest reasons why we are seeing mini animal farms or mini Chaz's popping up all over the place is because the original Seattle Chaz was allowed to go on for 3 weeks. And just like in Animal Farm, George Orwell's Animal Farm, they chased the farmer, Mr. Jones, off the farm. In Chaz, they chased the police out of their precinct, and they're doing that same kind of thing in all of these little hot spots all over the United States with very little stopping them.
And I think that's an interesting point, because even when we were looking in the Chaz or the CHOP, whatever they ended up calling it, what they ended up doing away with, they wanted to get rid of police, they wanted even to get rid of paramedics who weren't allowed in, but then what they did is they formed their own hierarchical structure in a way. They had their leader, Raz Simone, they had their own police forces who responded directly to him, did whatever they said. They essentially formed their own society, the very type that they were looking to do away with. They were even creating barriers around the whole community to begin with. So what does this say really about the human nature of this situation and what people are actually looking for?
Well, again, this is just like what happened at Animal Farm. Originally, Old Major, the pig, wise old pig, gave this very fervent speech and got all the pigs and all the other animals to go along and with the idea of the overthrow of the oppressor and so on. And they did start at the beginning, talking and trying to form their own society. They had their own rules. They had a rule, for example, all animals are equal, which ended up being some animals are more equal than others. They took over the farm, Jones's farm, in the end, and became like humans, just like the people who are now doing these protests. I don't want to call them they're not protests anymore, not peaceful protests, these riots, these looting, this anarchy. It's the same thing. There are many different agendas really underneath all of that, and they are replacing what they want to say are oppressors with their own in their own groups. They are forming their oppressors, and then they are fighting amongst themselves. But this is, of course, the real Mr. Jones. I mean, it's the big secret, right, is that the real Mr. Jones, the real people that these radicals in these groups who have taken over the protests want to get rid of is Trump.
And, this all does speak to this concept of a mob mentality, if you will, kind of the minority of individuals on certain topics dictating the conversations or the actions that come after that, the loudest voices in the room, if you will. And it's something that I don't think is just exclusive to these protests, for example. I think we can also look at so-called cancel culture, what's going on right now, where a loud group of voices conduct different movements online in order to try to hurt someone in some regard, either whether it's their job or just embarrass them, something like that. But it's also the polarization in this country. People like being in their little ecosystems, if you will, their own type of environments where they don't receive pushback. What is the cause of this? Is it social media? Is it economic disparagement? What really plays a role in all this that we're seeing right now? Or is it something that isn't that different? We just have more visual access to it.
Well, of course, the protesters, the original peaceful protesters at the very beginning, wanted us to believe, and yes, it was true that it started in a sense because of the murder of George Floyd. Yeah. But it has gone so far past that. It's not about that. It's really about destroying the country, and again, a lot of this did start with the facing our own mortality with coronavirus. People feeling like people becoming self-destructive, people, the fear is a big element of it. Not only fear of going into these mobs, protecting the statues, for example, or the couple in St. Louis, of course, fear. But it's not only the fear of coronavirus, but it's the fear of death ultimately, and wanting to take control of one's own death. Like fear, it's like nothing left to lose. When become super violent or do whatever they anarchistic, do whatever they want when they feel there's nothing left to lose, like when people commit suicide, when there's nothing left to lose. And that's basically what's happening all over the country.
And the phrase "nothing left to lose," that's a scary one, because when someone doesn't have anything to lose, as you were saying, they have no problem with burning down the entire system, whatever it may be. So let me ask you this simple question. Do we get past this, or is this something that is going to become the norm?
Yeah. Well, we have got to muster up and get past it. I mean, of course, one way is through the National Guard coming in, and then it's just so unbelievable. You know, we have gone what I call Corona crazy. The coronavirus started it, and people are making these rash decisions. They're not really thinking things through, like defund the police, of course, is one great example of that. And you know, we have to somehow get back from the edge and realize that we need to save our nation. And, you know, of course, when police are being told to stand down, for example, and we see them standing there or walking away with their tails between their legs, it's so hard for just average people to either do something, you know, physical, like protect statues, or do something to speak out. Like, even now, when I speak out, I know people are going to think, oh, she must be racist because I'm not racist. This isn't about racism. That's the point.
No, and in fact, that allegation is used to avoid having the conversation that you and I are having right now. I mean, when we talk about what's happening on the streets, it's a minority of people that are carrying out these actions. Overwhelming majority of Americans want peace, order, stability. They want to be able to go out in their communities and not worry about their small business being burned down or their local police station being burned down. The majority of Americans are on the side of peace and justice, and I think that is something that we do need to remember as we're covering this topic as well, because it does bring a sense of security a little bit to understanding that people are generally good, and what we're seeing on our TVs, a lot of times it's for ratings as well. But Dr. Lieberman, I appreciate you coming on tonight, breaking down this situation and the unrest all across the country. Thank you.